The economy is turbulent. There's also a culture war that's raging out there. And we saw President Trump stoked it this week. He called on Israel to block a visit by two minority women lawmakers, saying it would show great weakness. Representatives Ilhan Omar of Minnesota and Rashida Tlaib of Michigan were scheduled to travel to the country for an official visit. But after that tweet, Israel denied them permission, then later granted Tlaib consent to visit her grandmother in the West Bank. She decided not to go. Is President Trump trying to make these female lawmakers the face of the Democratic Party?
I knew what was coming out. Yes, absolutely. That, and he's been doing that, trying to do it for a long time. This was just
why?
Because they are so far left. I mean, they are Nancy Pelosi, the speaker, has had trouble with them. They have been criticized by a number of moderate Democrats on the Hill, and so, but to Trump, this is great politics for him. They are extreme on many issues, and the more he can paint them as this is the Democratic Party, the better he feels he can do. I mean, that you saw the tweet this week where he said they hate Israel, and he had hate in big capital letters in the tweet.
Which neither of them have ever said anything like that.
Right.
I think the really incredibly disturbing issue here, though, was how unprecedented it is for an American president to pressure a foreign ally to prevent a congressional visit. Israel gets more foreign aid and military aid than any other country has since the Camp David Accord, Israel and Egypt. But Israel is the foremost recipient of U.S. aid. Congressional oversight should be part of that. And members of Congress, elected members of Congress, in the only democracy, visiting the only democracy in the Middle East, ought to be able to go.
Why did Prime Minister Netanyahu go along with this?
He was boxed in by President Trump. First, they had said a month ago that they could go. That's what his ambassador here, Ron Dermer, said. And they were struggling with it in the 24 hours leading up to it. But once the president pressured them and made, I mean, it's an election.
Exactly.
But he's also being criticized back home for this.
Yeah.
This shows him also, as popular as President Trump is in Israel, which is enormously popular, at the same time, the intellectual elites are really criticizing him for this, for caving into President Trump, for bowing to the pressure. It was a reversal, no question.
But he has made a strategic decision politically to lash himself to Donald Trump as he tries to save his own job. So if that's your strategy, this comes up, you almost have to follow that path. Yeah.
But at the same time, she could not go under these restrictions because it basically said she could go visit her grandmother in the West Bank, but she could not speak politically. She could not say anything. And as a member of Congress, that was an unacceptable.
And it was Donald Trump faced so much criticism here for that, from including, I mean, AIPAC criticized Israel. AIPAC, which is so pro-Israel, went so far as to criticize Israel for this decision. So there were Republicans, Democrats, everyone were very critical.
But what is this really about? You look at just a few minutes before we went to air, the president, multiple tweets about these congresswomen. And he said, Tlaib and Omar are fast becoming the face of the Democratic Party. He's mocking them. He's mocking them repeatedly. Inside the White House, is this the president alone, or is this part of a strategy?
Well, this is a strategy that's being led by the president. The people who are remaining in the White House and in the campaign have sort of made their peace with Donald Trump, and they follow whatever he does. So they're following his lead on this. They do believe that there is some political strategy in sort of.
What is it?
Well, the president has been very concerned about how Democrats are always unified, and it's always been the Republicans that have been fighting each other. So he's found a group of women in the Congress who forced dissension within the Democratic Party, and he wants to inflame those tensions and elevate them so that Nancy Pelosi has people who are, empowered, who may be going against her in the Democratic field. And that's something that he's tried to push, and he's tried to elevate these women in part because he thinks that it helps him politically. Just from a purely political point of view, the president thinks that fighting with these freshman women of Congress helps him in his 2020 race.
What does this mean for governing? You have gun control on the agenda. Does this poison the well, this kind of acrimony?
Among Democrats on the Hill?
No, among both sides, for anything to happen this fall.
Well, absolutely. Although
there
have been talks at the White House. We're unclear with how far it's going to go, but there have been talks at the White House with key senators on the Hill about some kind of gun control legislation this fall.
He seemed to be backing off of it a bit in his Thursday night speech in New Hampshire, talking about mental health, that people with mental health problems pull the trigger. It's not the guns. So he may already be backing away from what he had said earlier in the week about background checks. And I don't think it's an accident that he reignited this racial and cultural war with the squad, the so-called squad, after 2 mass shootings, a lot of criticism of his behavior in El Paso, and the controversies, as well as an 800-point drop in the market, at least in one day. He needed a distraction, and that's when he went to war with the squad again.
I just want to say, we talk about all these things that Donald Trump does, the response to El Paso, the stock market drop, the attacks on the squad. He, all through two and a half years of his president, he's basically stayed at 38%. Nothing seems to budge his numbers, no matter what he does.
Yeah, but the key to the re-election for him is going to be make sure that 40% of the country is dug in as hard as possible for him, and they are.
But it's still not enough.
Well, it's not enough, except there's a small group of people in the middle who don't like Donald Trump but think he's doing a good job handling the economy. And in our polling, that's about a 10% slice of the electorate. Well, that's where the election will get decided. But it starts with making sure that 40 to 45% base is locked in and guaranteed to show up and vote, whereas some of the people on the other side might not show up. That's the starting point. It's not enough.
Some of those suburban voters who the Republicans lost in 2018 may not be happy about their 401ks this week.
Right, and they're obviously not happy about the way the president conducts himself on cultural issues, on divisive issues, the fact that he's leading a party in a much more divisive approach to governing. But they have been happy with the economy so far, and if that starts to tank, then the president may end up losing them. But the president, to your point about how difficult it will be to get things done, it's hard to see Congress making much progress on gun control, on...
The president says he wants to do background checks.
He does, but one of the biggest applause lines at his Manchester rally in New Hampshire the other day was when he said, it's not the people, it's not the guns that pull the trigger, it's mentally ill people, and it's not about the second, we have to stand up for the Second Amendment. So it does appear that the president wants to back away from anything major on gun control.